Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today I'm joined by John. John, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'll be happy to do so. Thank you for having me. My name is John Bollman. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resource Officer for Pella Corporation. I've been with Pella since December 2019, and I've been the head of HR for a couple other companies and also in the large HR leadership roles with for many years with Gleb Corporation, for what that's worth. Just a little bit about Pella, if I can.
Yeah.
Pella Corporation is almost at 100 years, so we'll hit our 100th anniversary. 2025. We are a leader in the window and door category. We're a manufacturing company, obviously, because of the products that we manufacture. And I think that's an important piece. We're headquartered here in actually Pella, Iowa. We have a little over 10,000 employees in the company, and we have about 20 manufacturing sites and probably 250 or thereabouts showrooms around the country. People can see our products. Interesting, our corporate headquarters here in Pella, we actually have a very large manufacturing site. It has over 1,500 people. And I think given the conversation we're going to have here today, just thinking about how manufacturing companies think about the work, I think is important because it could be different than other different sectors, in the business world.
Sure.
And if I could, I just at a high level might just say something about our strategy.
Of course.
I think is interesting. I also think there's elements of this that are really relevant. First off, we've been executing very effectively a growth strategy, and I think that will continue going forward. I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation continuing within our industry for what that's worth. And so as part of the strategy, we actually have three different pillars. One is on accelerating growth, so that's a big part of the growth. But to no surprise, one is on driving operational excellence. So that's really the manufacturing and engineering side. But then the third pillar, we call building a talent advantage. But that's really effectively a people strategy. We've been deliberate about the choice of calling it building a talent advantage. But what's really interesting, I think is an important point for us in our conversation today, is that our CEO, and I think this is different, at least based on some of my experience, our CEO is very clear, as is the executive team, that this is the most important part of the strategy, which is obvious, right? Honestly, it's all about people, but I think it's a real indication of us being a people-centric company. And a big part of that is focused on, obviously talent development and growing and, our team members. And obviously because our growth as a company, we have to attract people from outside the company. But the last part I just want to mention, and then I'll see, what other questions you will have for me. We have a pretty differentiated culture. And there's in the February 2018, or January-February 2018 edition of Harvard Business Review, there's a nice article regarding a model that companies can use to determine what their culture is. And Pella actually went through a process around that time saying, what should our culture be given this growth strategy we have? And I think that's important because, if you take strategy and integrate culture, that by itself can do an awful lot to drive performance. And basically our culture was defined as one that going forward, it has to be anchored in caring, a learning organization, which is very important, and we'll apply the conversation today. And learning means you get decisions at the right level, you empower your people, okay to fail forward, but then results is the third part of it. And the key part of this in the end is that when we, for example, interview people as candidates to come into Pella Corporation, let's say they talk to, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 people during the course of one day with us or a couple of days or whatever. And if they ask a question, not an uncommon question to ask, describe our culture, if you could, please. They're going to get a really similar answer. And I would maintain that you can do that same exercise at other companies. You might not get that. And then the more important, honestly, is when they start with us, it's very common for them to say, oh, it's exactly what I expected. So that's a little bit about, who we are as a company. And I just wanted to kind of lay that out because I do think it sets the groundwork we're going to have.
Yeah, that's really good context. Thank you. And definitely flexible work is going to be different at companies that have a frontline workforce. I've consulted for Applied Materials, which is a Fortune 200 high-tech manufacturer. It has something like 30,000 staff, helping them with their hybrid work, flexible work model. I've consulted for a home healthcare company, which again has to have some people on the front lines. So I'm quite familiar with companies that are figuring out a flexible work model for some of their staff, while other staff have to be on the factory floor or dealing with clients in some in-person fashion. So you joined Pella just at the right time, December 2019, a couple of months before the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened and things went sideways. So tell me a little bit more about what kind of flexible work strategy did Pella adopt?
Well, initially, probably not unlike a lot of other companies, we had, other than our manufacturing team members who obviously had to come into work.
Yes.
And we certainly put lots of different practices in place to hopefully protect our team members, and did a number of things to support, to ensure that they were taking the right precautions and providing whatever support we had to, because naturally some team members contracted COVID and we had to help support them and what have you. But we went for a pretty significant time, basically saying, okay, given all the flexibility our team members needed at that point, what we really said is we would like individual leaders, starting with the functional leaders, to work with their team members and figure out what makes sense for people. Here at our corporate office, frankly, there were not as many people in the office and more people working remotely. Obviously, you're taking advantage of the technology in terms of being able to have the meetings that you need and engage team members on business issues, whatever, and doing it as efficiently as possible. And we worked that way, frankly, all the way up until April of 2023. More and more people closer to that time in April of 23, probably certainly in 2022, and then into early 2023, more and more people began to spend more time in the office, but not under any requirement on our part, but honestly just working directly with their functional leaders to determine, okay, what makes sense. And in the end, the most important part is people have to be held accountable, be aware of what we needed them to do in their respective jobs, and be held accountable from that standpoint. We performed as well as possible under those circumstances. So that's what we did initially.
Makes sense.
But then I can tell you what happened if you want.
Yes. So what happened after April 2023?
Yeah. Well, just to set the stage here a little bit, we were getting a lot of purposeful feedback from team members around the organization. Remember what I said about our culture being a learning company, and it's important for us to understand from our team members how this was working and what some of the what their perspective is, what would make sense for our team members. We had to think about what's right for Pella and what's right for our team members, and again, with a lot of input from across and down the organization, we basically came out and said that we support flexibility, we continue to support flexibility. We understand that the hybrid work is something that's here to stay. By the way, our headquarters in Pella, if people live close to the headquarters, there's not much of a commute, and that's also
that's nice
factor, I think, which is different. We do have a number of teams that live in the Des Moines area, but it's a pretty simple commute in terms of the experience. It may take 45 minutes to drive in some cases, depending on where people live, but it's difficult drive like you might find if you're in other major metropolitan areas. So I think that's an interesting factor. But the bottom line is we came out and said we want to encourage team members to have anchor days in the office. And those anchor days are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but still keeping it in the hands of the functional leaders to determine what makes sense, in their respective areas. We're not tracking, whether people are here in the office or not in the office. Again, it's about being accountable for delivering the expectations you have in your role. We did different things where we established what we called connection events at that time, but we had time each month during those days where we were providing an opportunity for team members to come together, providing food and and just an opportunity to engage and connect and socialize a little bit. So we did that. We also made sure we had on-site food available for people when they were, in the office, which we didn't really have at that level during the pandemic. So we wanted to ensure that that was happening. We were scheduling, the meetings that you typically have, whether they're staff meetings, whether they're a quarterly meeting with a larger group of people, whether it's some sort of leadership meeting that has, 50 people or 75 or 100 people, we're scheduling those meetings during those days.
Makes sense.
And I also want to underscore the point that we think, we have a very differentiated culture, and we think, having that opportunity to engage in person and collaborate with each other and connect with each other is important also for us as a business, and frankly for the team members. They go about their respective jobs. So we felt like we were doing the right things there. We have childcare, by the way, which we put in place here in Pella, which is available for team members to use. It's not on site,
Nice.
on the road, and which all team members can have access to if they have that situation. So we're trying to do the right things to make this work.
Excellent. And so you've chosen a model where you encourage people to come in 3 days a week. You have those anchors. You don't force them. It sounds like you let team members work with their supervisor to make the decision on the when and how often to come in given those anchor days. What have you found to be the benefits of this model?
Well, first off, we think it's important from a standpoint of collaboration. Okay, so we think there is value in in-person work. There's value in in-person work because you have the chance to collaborate with each other. You have the chance, to connect. You have a chance to work on issues in person, maybe more effectively, and to come up with, whatever the right decisions are. Our culture, again, differentiated, and particularly if you're relatively new to the company, and if you're, now if you joined during the pandemic, and of course that's happened in different companies, including Pella, did you experience the company, its culture, and really understand it? Probably, that was hampered a bit because of the remote work that might have been dictated by the pandemic. And so the reality, it's very important for us to, have our people, just having that opportunity to connect and work together and solve problems together. So we think that was a big part of it, to be honest with you. So.
Okay. And so that's the in-person collaboration. But I'm sure you ran into a little bit of challenges. Challenges happen as part of this transition. And what do you perceive as the challenges of this way of working?
Yeah. Well, first off, the biggest challenge we had is if we had people, there's a challenge around collaboration if you don't have people working effectively together. Some are, remote and flexible, and some in the office. And so certainly having consistency around collaboration is something that we work through. But the way you work through that is team members just understanding everybody's circumstances and situation, and finding ways to make it work and make sure that they're engaging, involving the people. We found that there were opportunities for us to learn and grow in terms of how we're managing communications with the organization. When you end up having people that are working at different places, you have to be thoughtful about how you're engaging and communicating with your team members. When you're a leader, are you making sure that you're doing a good job of cascading communications? Are you doing it in a way that's going to connect with the people that may be working remotely versus the ones that may be working on site? If you're in a meeting like we're in right now, honestly, if you end up having, let's say you have a staff of 10 people or something like that, and 7 of them are going to be remote and the other 3 are going to be in the office, well, everybody ought to be, on their screen then, so they all see each other. I mean, and these are obvious things that different, organizations I'm sure have done, and functions, and just to make sure that they're seeing each other and they're using the opportunity to connect. But I think that's part of it. I think the culture part which I've already mentioned several times now, is one of the challenges we just have had to work through to ensure our people, particularly newer people in the organization, were understanding our culture, because we truly think it's a differentiator. And I think there's still some work that you have to have a consideration about the impact it's having on people. I think that is there a factor around wellness that cuts both ways? And I think there is. From a wellness standpoint, is the situation better to be working in the hybrid and in a remote situation, or for those that are in that situation, is there an impact on their overall wellness if they're not sometimes in the workplace and really having that connection, with team members? Because we all know that, it's been out there for a long time. Gallup, I think, was probably the organization that really made the important point here. Having good friends and good relationships at work. Important, for people, and that's really meaningful and can have a real positive impact.
Now, so it sounds like you're leaving a lot up to managers, and you're teaching them how to communicate more effectively, how to make decisions. What kind of training have you provided to your managers? Have you used external resources? Have you used internal resources? What have you done to help your managers, who are the linchpin of the success of your model, be successful in your model?
Yeah, actually, we just had a leadership summit this year, and we have just had approximately, think about the total number of people. Let's say it had around 170 people that were part of this summit. And we put a big focus in two areas. One was on generally overall accountability, which I'll then tie into the communication part, but then also bringing an outside resource in to give us some tools and educate us around how we can be more effective as communicators. So we want to make sure we're really building that muscle as an organization and as leaders to be more effective at communicating. So we make the point, hey, that's a big accountability as a leader to communicate well and effectively with your people. And here are some tools and some support to help you be more effective at being able to do that. So we've made a real concerted effort there to again emphasize accountability and provide tools and support, which is obviously a continuous process for our people.
Sure. Excellent. Now, as we wrap up, what do you see as the future of flexible work at Pella?
I don't know if I see it changing to be. I mean, I think hybrid. I think flexibility is going to be important, and I think hybrid is going to be important because we have to make sure that we are. We have to understand what's right for the company and what's right for our respective team members. Yeah. And I think that's just part of making sure that you have the right talent, the right capability in your organization. I think it's important for companies like ours to be one of the winning companies in this war for talent that's been around for a long time. So that's honestly, that's a big part of it. We have an interesting process, by the way, that I probably should have mentioned at the front end. And it's really around how we think about the development of team members. And it's called shared success. And very simple, what shared success does is it says, as the individual, answer the question of what's important to you, and what do you need from from the organization, and we as a company, what's important to us, and what do we need from the individual. The point is to really kind of come together and have a shared success plan in terms of what makes sense for that individual. And I think that comes into play a little bit here when you think about this whole notion of flexibility, because everybody's situation could be a little bit different. And we have to understand that and appreciate that. But in the end, we want to certainly maximize or optimize our performance as an organization, naturally, as you would expect. And we make sure that our people are productive, and sometimes they can be more productive in an environment where they're working outside of work, and other times it's going to make sense and they're going to be more productive when they're at work and on site. I will tell you that the only other thing we're doing is we're a learning organization. So we want to understand how our people are experiencing what we have put into place so far. And the answer is we're not really encountering any issues or any concerns. We're actually seeing more and more people come into work. Again, we would like people to think about these anchor days from that standpoint, but seeing more and more people choosing to want to be in the workplace. To be honest with you, but we're going to ears to the ground, and we have ways in which we connect with our team members to ensure that we understand issues, concerns that they might have. And then, are they areas that we need to address, and if so, how?
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much, John. I really appreciate your time and expertise.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and leave a review. It helps others discover the show, and it helps us improve the show.